the gentlewoman from Hawaii, Ms. Gabbard, and I ask unanimous consent that Ms. Gabbard be allowed to fully participate in today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. Now it's a pleasure to recognize my friend, the gentlewoman from the great state of Hawaii, for 5 minutes of questions.
I thank the chairman and Ranking Member Kelly for holding this important hearing, and for all of the witnesses for taking the time and coming and sharing your experiences and expertise here. I apologize for missing the first part of the hearing, but I'm sure a number of these topics have been discussed, but I think they all boil down to the immediate task at hand, which is seeing what actions can and should be taken to make sure that our elections are protected. For our democracy to work, the American people need to have faith and trust in our elections infrastructure, that the votes that they cast will actually be counted. And this is why making sure that our elections infrastructure is impenetrable is essential. And that's the task before us here in Congress and before our elections officials. Mr. Cortez, I'd love to hear your insights regarding Virginia's decision to switch from direct recording electronic voting machines to paper ballots. What were any obstacles that you found in implementing that change, and did you see voter confidence rise once that change was made?
Congresswoman, in terms of our switch over to paper, I think the biggest obstacle that we faced was timing and the proximity to the election. We have statewide elections in Virginia every year, and so we always have very little time to implement changes. I think in this particular round of decertification, subsequent to the DEF-CON reporting that came out, the biggest challenges we faced were getting equipment to our state IT agency for them to test and provide us with their assessment. When it came down to the final decision about what to do with the equipment, our biggest consideration was if we had an issue, if there was some issue reported on Election Day, would we have the confidence to go out and tell our voters that the results from the machines were accurate and that we could confirm that. And I think ultimately we determined in consultation with our wonderful staff of the state IT agency and their assessment that we wouldn't be in a position to do that with the equipment we were using. Without that independent verification the paper ballot, there'd be no way for us to do that. And so I think that ultimately was the moment where decertification moved forward, and we decided to have paper ballots statewide for this past November. Our local election officials had less than 60 days before the election, frankly less than 2 weeks before the start of absentee voting, to deploy new equipment. They did a phenomenal job using exceptionally limited resources that they have and working with, not only in partnership with us, but also in terms of the voting system vendors to get equipment deployed, get ballots printed, do training, and do voter education all within that window. And they pulled it off successfully. And so I give a lot of credit to our local election officials across the state for being able to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Hennessy, I just came in here, the last part of your previous statement about making sure that, I think you used the word impossible, making it so that our elections infrastructure is impossible to hack. Noting the DEF-CON report that came out and the fact that it states by the end of DEF-CON conference, every paperless electronic voting machine was effectively breached in some manner, would the implementation of voting machines across the country with some form of an auditable paper record create that impossibility?
So to clarify, I was referring to impossible to hack as a goal of sort of the deterrence by denial model. I don't know that that's achievable, although we shouldn't make perfect the enemy of the good. There's vast improvements that can be made. Certainly we should want to move to a place in which systems are both auditable and also audited. And so not just to think about how do we ensure that a built-in resiliency model, so in the event that there is some form of compromise, some reason to doubt the outcomes, that we actually have a system in place to verify and restore voter confidence. Right, and then also that we actually periodically undertake those checks, right? An auditable system is effectively meaningless if we actually don't undertake the audit.
This is such an important point, and I think, Mr. Cortez, your testimony is critical to this. in answering that question of how do we ensure with confidence that you can answer your voters saying that the election results are accurate. I'm working on legislation that will essentially ensure that whatever the systems the states choose to use in their elections, obviously that is the freedom of the states to do that, that there be some form of backup in place, a paper voter verified backup to ensure exactly that question, and that we can all answer with confidence to voters that the election results are as a result of the votes that they cast. So I thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Mr.